Welcome to the Whiskey Congress. Honest, open talk dedicated to speaking the truth to those who are open to hearing it. Black, white, right, left. Most importantly, honest, bold, and fueled by good whiskey. In Whiskey Veritas, we are Whiskey Congress. Join the evolution.
Welcome once again to Whiskey Congress, and yes, we have a new whiskey to talk about. This is George Dickel 12. It is a sour mash whiskey, a bourbon. No, it's not a bourbon. It's made in Tennessee. It's just a sour mash whiskey. It is 45% alcohol or 90 proof. I think it's pretty smooth. I like it. Don't love it. I'm going to go 87.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give it an 88, and it's 90%.
Right.
So,
okay, because it's got the.
But taste wise, it doesn't stand out. It's a little kind of on the drier end, I guess.
Yeah.
It's not as sweet as some of the other bourbons that we've had, and but I mean, it's
still good. I'm not bad mouthing anyway.
Right. I mean, it's definitely drinkable. Whiskey is weird. I guess I kind of classify whiskey in two categories: sipper or shooter.
Right.
And
there's some overlap.
Right. And this one is, like Jameson is a straight shooter. Jim Beam is a shooter.
But I don't mind sipping Jameson. I will not sip Jim Beam because it's not very good.
Fair. But in this one is kind of like on the border.
I agree.
We're going to sip it right now.
I think the price point was $20 a bottle, so I won't feel guilty shooting it.
No.
And it's not so good that I'll feel guilty shooting it.
Right. And George Dickel is a well-respected whiskey brand.
Yep.
On the cost tier, it's low. Now, to be fair, for the longest time, bourbon and American whiskey has generally always been cheap, right?
Right.
Other than Pappy Van Winkle, once it's been even Pappy Van Winkle, if you look at the actual suggested retail price for it, it's anywhere from $35 to $200, which are reasonable prices for your standard kind of expressions, right? Like, and the way whiskey goes, the older it is, generally the more you pay for it in terms of costs, right? Like every so many years it goes up, so many tens of twenties of dollars. But this particular brand, George Dickel, and a few others that we've had, you can get for under $30, and it's not a bad whiskey. And if you have it, people aren't going to be like, "What the hell is that?"
Right.
It's decently known. So, yay.
Yeah, good stuff. All right, so we got a lot of topics. We're trying to go less mainstream lately. I want to keep that up. And less Trump, right? You sent me an article about a bill proposed in Mexico to essentially end drug illegality, to decriminalize drugs in the country of Mexico.
Yes. So Mexico is looking to decriminalize all drugs.
Right.
And they not only do they want to do it in Mexico, but they want to negotiate and have the U.S. do something similar. Right. And because they feel that because of the black market and because of the illegality, it promotes corruption, along with the fact that they are also recognizing that it's a health crisis as opposed to a criminal justice issue. And so they would like the U.S. to follow suit. And then, because if they don't, if we don't as a country, then we're sandwiched between two countries that Canada's completely legalized
cannabis,
right? And then and then if we have California, and they decriminalize everything, we're sandwiched between two, opposing forces to what we're, what we stand for as a country. Even though it looks like a majority of the country is for legalization of cannabis, and Colorado just legalized mushrooms.
Right. But let me say something at the beginning of this, because I've had this discussion with some friends and it's gone sideways, and I don't want this to happen here. Mexico's talking about decriminalizing and saying, let's decriminalize, which is not legalizing everything. It is just saying it is no longer a criminal offense if you are an abuser of, heroin, meth, whatever. We're going to force you to go to a program, and there's steps in place. But to just throw people in jail for possession is not a productive way to fix things.
We don't have details of exactly what the Mexican president is proposing. When he was running for
election, right?
Election, he was. This was part of his platform,
right?
Was addressing drugs and how they're treated, and what the issues that it causes in Mexico. And Mexico has a unique problem in the level of corruption drugs causes. Now, the United States has...
In large part because it has to cross through there to get into the United States.
Well, yes. But, I mean, and the United States has issues with drugs and corruption and everything else as well. I don't know. It's just... We view it differently. And I think the drug corruption in Mexico reaches higher levels, in terms of paid officials and government entities. But, I mean, listen, there's a lot that gets unsaid that we don't know that happens here in the United States. So I'm sure that there's more similarities than anyone in the U.S. would like to admit.
We've gone back and forth about what role the CIA has played in funding CIA operations with drugs, but it's probably... All right, so I'm thinking it's rampant. You think need more documentation? Fine. But it's not zero. I think we can all agree.
Well, I mean, I settled my thought process with the CIA and their involvement with drug proliferation in the United States was...
Easier for you to say.
One, they didn't... They made deals to look the other way, right? Did they say, all right, here's money. We're going to take... you take our money, we'll take your drugs, and then we're going to take the drugs and deliberately plant them in black neighborhoods to, ruin, black cities. Did that happen?
Maybe, but not with that level of.
I don't think we
insidious.
I don't even know. I wouldn't put in given the group of people that we're dealing with at the time, in the late 70s and the early 80s and early 90s, I wouldn't put it past them. But I don't think we have any sort of proof that happens. What we do have proof of is the CIA agreeing to look the other way when it came to routes and importation, because even though they could have done something, they could have got the FBI, the DEA involved to stop some of this stuff. They didn't, because they were more worried about whatever their mission was. Now,
stopping the spread of communism was the issue at the time.
Right. So what's the difference in terms of culpability and liability? I don't know. It's probably not that much. And they're still just as responsible for it. Just because they didn't take it and place it, they knew where it was coming from and they knew where it was going, and they did nothing to stop it. So, yeah, there's still a problem there, but it's not quite the same. And again, this is what we...
This is history.
This is history based off of what we know, right, in terms of documents that are put out there. Now, what was going on behind the scenes, and we've got plenty of stories of drug runners that were soldiers and pilots and... various, agents of different agencies who were directly involved in some really, really sketchy behavior in terms of, smuggling drugs and things like that into the country. But
let's hit the bigger picture here. The drug war has been going on how long? Since the 60s, 50s?
I think legitimately, I think it started, the ball started rolling with Nixon. And Reagan really picked up the mantle and said, and went all out. Right. And that's, early, mid 80s, and listen, we can't say it's all about enforcement and, it's just like, that's what made things so bad. Things were bad, right? I mean, you had not that things have changed that much, but you had overdoses left and right.
Sure.
You had shootings, stabbings, like all sorts of violent crime that was directly associated with it, and we saw it. And there was an outpouring of a want to solve it from the people in these neighborhoods, right? I mean, there were black families and black parents out there who just listen. We want the violence to end. We want the violence to stop. We want people to stop dying because of these drug overdoses. Like, that was real, and so. There are a number of politicians who are getting their feet held to the fire over, mass incarceration and the crime bill and things like that. And I think we can't ignore that there was a cry out from the people who that impacted, right? There was a cry out for them to do something. And, politicians responded in a way that clearly, looking back on it with 2020 vision, was problematic, right? We should have looked at this as a healthcare crisis from the beginning.
Right.
Right? We shouldn't have taken such a hard line where if you're caught with marijuana, then you go to jail for 10, 15, 20 years life, whatever it might be. We did we didn't do it right? Like, we definitely handled it wrong. And so now the question is, how do we fix it? And Canada has looked at it. Mexico is looking at it. And, we're
right in the middle.
Right between those two and holding kind of firm federally as to how we view marijuana, at least marijuana.
When talking about cannabis, marijuana, however we're going to say it, we're on the same page there that the Fed should just say, putting this in the same category as heroin, meth, whatever, is stupid. We were smart enough in 2018 to recognize that banning hemp was stupid, and we fixed that, thankfully, after 100 years of banning non-psychoactive products.
And part of that is the paper lobby. They've lost some steam, right? People are using less paper now.
Right.
There's still a ton of paper used, but they just don't.
There's so many lobbies with money in this game, Steve.
Agreed.
Right? Prison. So you're right. You're right that hemp and paper was an issue, and I think alcohol and big pharma play a big role.
Right.
Throw in prisons. Throw in law enforcement. Throw in, DEA. There's an entire fucking government agency, and then there's that. Yeah. Right.
I have a situation where I won't go into detail, but a close friend of mine who came to me for help, because he was busted with, what he thought was a decent amount of marijuana. Now, what's interesting is, looking at how that is probably going to shake out by the time it's all said and done. 10 years ago, I would be worried that he was going to jail for a long time. As the case stands right now, I'm pretty sure we can get the felony knocked down to a misdemeanor, and I am 99.9% sure. Listen, he got arrested for this in October. The charges just hit in the last, couple weeks, and I am 99.9% sure he won't do a night in jail.
Okay, I think I know who you're talking about now. Not by name, but I know the individual. And how much, just sidebar everything here, how much free legal work have you done in your life? But anyway,
too much.
Yeah,
too much for the part of me that wants to buy a boat.
Right, which we were discussing before. Hey guys, remember when I did this shit for you? Time to pay up. I want a boat, motherfuckers. Right. So anyway, it's interesting to me to see Mexico making this move. In terms of violence, as much violence there is in America, revolving around drug trade, in Mexico, in select areas, it's horrifying. Ooh. The drug gangs
are beyond a war zone.
Yeah,
beyond a war zone. It's brutal
because there's no code of conduct. It is.
Have you ever been to a border city?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
No, I haven't. When I was working in Southern California, I wanted to go to Tijuana. I just never did because everyone told me, dude, you may not make it back.
Tijuana is wild.
Tijuana
is wild. It's not a joke.
They call it TJ down there. It's almost like we're going to TJ. I'm like, going to TJ. Oh, you mean Tijuana? Yeah,
Tijuana is wild. I got in some really bad situations down there. Not all 100% my fault, but whatever.
I think at one point you told. I do not remember the story, but I think we had a drunk night when we were talking about this.
But Tijuana as well. But Tijuana's not actually even. I'm thinking more. In Texas,
Juarez is the poster child for the disaster.
In having spent time, in some of these border cities, understanding what they're actually dealing with. Now it's been a while since I've been down there, and when I was there, you weren't seeing kind of if what is being reported is true, then there's an influx that's happened over the last couple of years, and things have kind of died off for a little bit. So when I was down there, you could see where it could be problematic. Right, you could I actually once I saw, people literally coming over the border from south of the border. Right, it is a legitimate concern, and those things do happen. So then the real question is, how does that relate to, like, how much of that are people, coming over to go work on a construction site, coming over to, work in hospitality or, work on a farm or whatever, and then how much of it is, hardcore drugs, or even if it's cannabis or even, whatever,
right.
How much of it is illegal shit, people just driving it over the border, carrying it over the border and whatever they can. I've contended for the longest time that's not where your drug issue is coming in.
Agreed. And here, let's be real about something. I know, all right, so we both know multiple regular cannabis users. I'm going to put it on other for personal reasons. Yeah. And I know a lot of people who are into coke. And I've never touched that stuff, and I never will. But they're not having a hard time getting it.
Nope.
So this whole prohibition and prevention plan has not been working. And to fail to recognize that is just delusion. It is not working. So it's not going to work.
I think you can work towards it, right? But you have to but there's it's multifaceted.
Sure.
Right? There is the health, the healthcare aspect of it. There's the social aspect of it. Poverty and the reason why people are so easily turn to drugs and selling drugs and the violence that's associated with it. And then you have the actual, just the social use, right? Like,
sure.
Cannabis helps you relax. You have a good time or whatever it might be. Or you're dealing with, something painful and it helps you deal with pain and all those other things. Even cocaine, like, yes, there's the abuse and we've all seen people that have gone down the wrong road, but we've also been at a party where people use it to have a good time and it keeps the night going.
It does.
Right? I mean, like...
Well, until it doesn't, because it has other side effects. But,
right. I mean, but... I think...
Little Coke dick joke there for those who are paying attention.
And I think that... Okay, anyway. But there's multiple things to look at besides just drugs coming in and drug use, drug abuse, and like, you have to look at all the different tentacles of what it means, and then that's how you kind of look at how to solve the problem. But just rounding people up and throwing them in jail and blaming people coming from across the border, and refusing to talk to Mexico about this at all, doesn't seem...
It's not working.
Doesn't seem like the way to go.
The prudent move. I would love to see all drugs decriminalized. I would love to see cannabis completely legalized. And I think it has an actual chance of happening in the next 5 to 10 years. Actually, I think it has a solid chance of happening in the next 5 to 10 years.
I fully agree. And
now, unfortunately, it might take 5 or 10 years.
Right. I wish this was something that Trump would focus on more. Right? Like, because he's all about distraction. He's all about, here's a shiny object over here while I'm doing stuff over here. And I think that, you're going into the 2020 election, this would be the perfect, and I've said it on the show, I think we both have, but that would be the perfect thing to really, one, distract people from, Mueller and all that other stuff. Like, you're going to have your hardliners who want to impeach him and want to see all his financial records and his birth records and all other shit. But I think if you really want to draw people together and you want to get the Democrats involved in something, going hard towards legalization is something that could really be a unifier. Strong.
No, you're talking about cannabis.
Just cannabis, right?
Well, I agree.
I mean, and I get what you're saying, but I think that things have to happen incrementally, and I think you can't go from cannabis being a Schedule I drug to saying, "All right, it's all good."
Woohoo! Party!
Right? Like, I mean,
but I'm not even. I'm not advocating for legalization of recreational.
But still, Jim. That's an extreme.
Yeah.
That's an extreme.
You're 100% right.
Like, all we're like right now, the main focus is, can we get the drug that does the least amount of damage decriminalized, right? And we have people saying, "Fuck you, fuck no, it's a gateway drug," and reefer madness.
Right.
So you're not going to go from that to decriminalizing
to
all drugs.
Amsterdam, right?
Right. Like, I mean,
no, you're right. You're right. All right. So we're pretty much on the same page here, though. We would love to see that step taken. We'd love to see drug use be treated as a health issue, not a criminal issue.
But what frustrates me is that, I'm bringing this up now.
Right.
That article that I referenced that,
right.
we do some pre-show preparation. And the article that
perhaps not enough, but some.
Right. But the article that I sent you was from 7 days ago, right?
Okay.
And it hasn't gotten a ton of news. You didn't even know about it, right? And that's the part that frustrates me, and that's what lets me know that my ideal situation is nowhere near the horizon.
It's not a priority for enough people.
It's just not a priority.
You also sent me an article about a woman in Texas getting shot and killed by a police officer. She was shot 5 times. I don't have her name in front of me, but she had multiple warrants out. She knew the officer involved in the shooting, who was an 11-year veteran. She was a 40-something-year-old woman.
44 something.
44, I think, yeah. And she allegedly grabbed at the taser of the officer that shot her, which I did not see the video. I think you did.
Yeah, so I saw the video, and she yells at him at one point, like, "You're harassing me," and then there's someone obviously videotaping it from afar. Right. She goes down on the ground. It's hard to see. It's at night. It's dark. There's some light, but not enough light to where everything is clear. And it looks like the person is recording on like a Sanyo flip phone. But the
way to get judgy about.
I'm sorry. I know. iPhone or die with me. iPhone 7 or die
and you're
with
not
me,
kidding,
by the way.
I know. Oh, I know. Trust me, I know you're not kidding.
Don't come at me with your iPhone 6S bullshit. But no, on a serious note, so she goes down. There's reports that he tased her.
Right, that's what I read. That was the article I read.
Right, and then she gained control of the taser, and I think the last article I read was that she gained control of the taser and then hit him in the balls with the taser, and then he shot her.
Okay, if that happened, my opinion changes a little bit. You shoot me in the nuts with a taser.
She didn't shoot him. She just hit him. Like, she physically...
Okay,
like, she banged his nuts with the handle of the taser.
Okay.
And then he shot her.
This wasn't the Hangover with, like, in the nuts!
Right.
Because, frankly, that... is very wrong. We're kind of being assholes right now because we're talking about women. I started. I dragged you in, but you came with me.
Right.
Like the mountain and the hound, we both ended up off the cliff,
going down in flames.
We'll come back to that.
So I guess he shot at her 5 times, hitting her at least once.
She died on the scene. So
died on the scene. Ruled a homicide. So we're kind of back to this question, right? And it's not even a question. I'm pretty sure that this cop he's on paid administrative leave.
Right.
Per usual. Right. Right. They're going to do an investigation. She had warrants.
This happened in the Houston area, which is not known for...
It happened in Texas. On the video, it does look like she appeared to grab for his taser.
She also said she was pregnant,
she said
which
she
apparently
was
not true.
Well, the police said...
The police station, that was not
she
true.
was not pregnant.
Right.
Like, how do you know? Right? And how do they know?
Autopsy.
Okay, the autopsy report isn't back. You had a medical examiner who said, all right, she died by gunshot wound. That's a homicide. Like, but do we have the test back to know if she's pregnant yet or not yet? Maybe not.
I would think they would get that pretty quickly, but
maybe.
Regardless,
I don't know.
Regardless,
either way, and you know what? Her saying she's pregnant actually doesn't matter.
Might be a defense thing, right? Like, if I say this, you might not shoot me.
Right.
You sick fuck.
But I don't think. I'm not even looking at that as a fact of the matter. Right? I'm looking at what happened, and what I can tell you is he's going to say, she went for my taser, I feared for my safety, I feared for my life, she hit me in the crotch with the taser, at that point in time I had no choice, and he is going to walk, right? Like, I have no... the
only argument I have is, will he even be charged?
No.
Okay.
I don't think he will.
So he's not going to...
Right, he's
never going to be charged.
He's going to go on paid administrative leave, and then he's going to be back to work in 6 months.
Now, here's the thing. We, neither of us ever worked in law enforcement. We acknowledge that.
Mm-hmm.
We weren't there. I've not even seen the video, so I'm going to be just say, if he does not get thoroughly investigated, that's where I'll lose my shit. Because in the article I read, it said they had a previous interaction. I want to know what that means.
Yes.
Because if it means, like it said that, he knew she had outstanding warrants and he was going to execute a warrant. All right, I mean, like, that's the job. I hear you. Now, how he chose to handle it and should someone have ended up dead, I don't think so. I don't know. But I do need this to get...
I mean, her warrants were criminal mischief and a domestic situation that hasn't been described, but given, the way it was... Given the way that it was presented, I mean, I don't think that you would look at her and say, all right, she's a
threat.
Right. And I mean, we're also leaving out a major part of this is that, she had serious mental health issues, right? I mean, she had serious mental health issues. She was on medication. Maybe she was off medication at this point in time, but she had issues with schizophrenia, which, I mean, schizophrenic behavior gets... kind of conflated with criminal behavior more often than not. There was a person who was killed by police here in Cleveland who had issues with schizophrenia, and they didn't shoot her, but they handcuffed her and slammed her down in a way where she ended up not being able to breathe, and she suffocated to death. So,
I mean, I have a friend who's very schizophrenic, and it's disturbing how it is. Right. Yeah, it's schizophrenia. Yeah.
But that's not us calling it.
All right, I want to move on from this because we've kind of dragged things out, and there's a few other things I really want to talk about. We have avoided any issues related to abortion for our entire show. A few times it's crept up, and you've jumped in and said, it doesn't affect you personally, it doesn't affect me personally, we're not women, so we can't talk about it. Now, it really has almost no personal impact on either of our lives now because you've gone through a surgery where you're not going to create a pregnancy, and no one will
fuck. I had a vasectomy,
and no one will fuck.
Why are you saying it that way?
And no one will fuck me.
Well,
so that's why I'm not a risk.
Bit of a drought, Jimmy.
It is a bit of a drought. So I was trying to set this joke up all fucking day, and you had to jump in. But anyway, yeah, I should have prepped you. But this Alabama abortion bill really is crazy to me. And I will say that Virginia and New York have some abortion bills that came out in the last 6 months that I find disturbing, but I'm also ignorant to. So I've heard stuff said like, a woman can deliver a viable fetus and they can kill it. I'm like, okay, any bill that says that, I cannot get on board with.
Right.
Ever. Now, I don't know that the bill actually says that because I've been lied to enough by those news sources.
Right.
But that would make me vomit. Having said that, what's going on in Alabama now is essentially an abortion ban. Mm-hmm. And what's hypocritical and weird to me, in reality, per this law, is on the doctor performing it. Now, let me be clear. I consider myself pro-life in the sense that I'm anti-death penalty. I would really love to see abortions become unnecessary, although I know that I'm being idyllic there. I'm anti... unnecessary war. If our country is not physically endangered, we shouldn't be putting our lives or the lives of others in danger. I am that guy, but I'm like the most liberal pro-lifer in the world. Having said that, I know multiple women have had abortions. I've dated a few, and it's a really tough subject. And when we talk about it, it's painful. And they know me, and some of them knew me when I was like pretty hardcore Catholic, and telling me the truth about that was a really agonizing personal interaction. But there's no way I would call any of those women murderers. And I also cannot get on board with the idea that if abortion is murder and the doctor performing an abortion is a murderer, then the woman having that abortion is complicit. And I'm not saying I want the law to hold them criminally accountable.
But
I'm saying
it's just not consistent.
It's not logical. It's right, exactly.
But
I'm not going to ask, am I wrong? I'm not wrong. Now, what I'm talking about is some ugly stuff, but you can't say that my logic is flawed here because if that event in your mind is a murder, then the woman involved in having that event conspired for that to happen. I'm not willing to go there personally, but if you're going to legislate this, you should fucking own it.
Well, that's just so the wrong way to go, obviously. And you get that, but I hate even presenting that idea. But it's happening. Right.
But it's happening in Alabama right now.
Right? No. You're absolutely right. Right? I mean, you're talking about the doctor going to jail for 100 years,
life or 99 years.
Right?
Like, it's not life. It's only 99 years.
I can hang it out. I'm a doctor at this point, so I'm probably in my late 30s, early 40s at the youngest. So another 100 years is fine. No, I do try to stay away from this issue because I just think that there are people way more qualified and who have way more stake in it who can have this conversation and just do it more articulately than we can. But we're not going to avoid it because it's just so in the spotlight right now. It's obvious what's happening. States that are, strongly in the pro-life camp are looking to push the envelope, get this in front of the Supreme Court, knowing that they've got a conservative Supreme Court.
Right.
And hopefully they can get Roe v. Wade overturned. I think that this law goes too far. I think that if this is what ends up in front of the Supreme Court, it could backfire.
From the pro-lifer perspective, right? Right,
from the pro-lifer perspective. I don't think Kavanaugh is who a lot of people think he is. Because I believe that Kavanaugh is heavily on the side of precedent and established law. And from a legal perspective, Roe v. Wade and abortion is established law. And so what this would be for the Supreme Court to, punt on stare decisis and say, you know what, we're going to go in, we're going to revisit this, and then we're going to change this, decided law and precedent is not really what the role of the Supreme Court. That's not how they're designed, right? Like, so this will kind of go against how they've operated over the last, however many years, decades.
Right.
So I think, that's one point on this, right? Like, I think the Alabama law goes too far.
And you know what backs that up, by the way, is what you brought to my attention is Pat Robertson from the 700 Club said this goes too far.
Right.
And it's not because he's saying, preventing exceptions for rape and incest, which, by the way, anyone who says a woman who was raped can't terminate a pregnancy, I have a real problem with.
And also a person who says a woman who is impregnated by incest that should have the baby. Like, I've got even more issue with you. Okay, right? Like, right. I mean, I've got issues with both. Right? I'm like, both are a hard no, but like, so
right. I don't want to parse this out. Like,
right?
Which is worse?
Right? Like, it's not which is worse, but I mean, you're just the potential of bad things to happen to a baby
child,
that's right. That's from an incestuous relationship. Like, there's science to back it up that's not a good idea, right? Like,
he could become the king of King's Landing. I'm sorry. I'm so dying to talk about Game of Thrones.
But I mean, I guess in piggybacking off what we just said, there's a lot of people out there who are pro-life who are saying rape and incest are only 1% or less than 1% of abortion cases.
And
so
they're probably right. They're probably right.
No.
Okay.
Jim, how can that possibly be right? Because think about how many cases of rape go unreported, right? We have no idea, right? Like, so, I mean, like, if you've got a woman who's been raped and she's not going to report it, do you think that when she's pregnant, she's going to say, when she's pregnant and she's sitting in...
she might not know,
right? Like,
I mean, she could have
what I'm saying is
someone else and then...
Right. I mean, but no matter what, like, when she's sitting in that clinic, do you think she's going to be like, oh, yeah, by the way, I was raped, right? If she's not willing to report it to the police, she's not willing to tell anybody else of any significance, you think that when she goes to that clinic, she's going to sit there and say, oh, yeah, I was raped? So I don't think that we have accurate statistics to say that it's less than 1%. There's no way that can be.
Let me let you finish your point.
And then the other part of it, like, that's same thing with incest, right? Like, how many people are going in and just like, yeah, my brother fucked me, and now I'm pregnant, so I'd prefer not to be anymore.
Don't make a West Virginia joke. Don't make a West Virginia joke.
I'm not going to.
I'm telling myself that. Well, that's my inner monologue.
So I'm just saying, like, I don't think we have accurate statistics on the number of people, the number of women. It's only women, right?
Right.
The number of women going into these clinics for, because they were impregnated due to rape or incest. Right, I mean, and the fact that the number is big, whatever they say the number is, it's more than that. You cannot convince me otherwise because we don't have accurate statistics on it. Because if they're not reporting it, we can't fucking can't track it.
But even so leave statistics or statistical percentages out of it. Fundamentally, saying if you are raped and become impregnated, that you are required to carry that child to term and then raise it because you are. Because God deemed that life to happen. We've talked about religion very little on the show, honestly. We almost never touch that subject.
Just because we're both demonic assholes.
Yeah, there's probably something to do with that. But to put that on someone else, to me, is unacceptable and revolting. And it's especially bad if you're putting it on someone as a white man. I don't even know what as a man. You know what? Let me take white out of it. As a man.
As a man.
It just, it's really easy for us to say, well, that's what you should do because that's what God wants. Well, okay, great, dude, but it ain't our problem.
Right. When you push a watermelon out of your dick, then we can talk. But you can't under any circumstance. So it just now, listen.
Again, when Pat Robertson came down, I want to declare, he said this law went too far. And his real point was he doesn't want this to be the case that gets put to challenge Roe v. Wade. So it's not what he was saying.
Well, no. I mean, is he saying he disagrees with the law? No. But even Pat Robertson recognizes that this goes too far from a legal standpoint if you want to win. And again, what's my thing, right?
Win.
Right? You want to win, right? Like, so sometimes you have to put...
And when Logic and Pat Robertson cross paths, it's not often, so enjoy it.
Right? But, I mean, what we're seeing more and more of from the left and the right, Democrats, GOP, or whatever, is putting ideology before,
reason and logic, yeah.
Reason and logic and
humanity.
Right.
I mean, it's
and that's the part that sucks. That's the part that's sad, and that's the part that hopefully I'm right. Right? Like, I mean, hopefully I'm right. Like, they take this case, Alabama, it ends up in the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court, Kavanaugh, and maybe even a couple other...
Roberts, maybe?
Right. I think Roberts almost... I'm willing to bet Roberts would come down against this. Right?
And people will...
I don't think they... I think
on the right,
I think that people...
No,
I think people have bailed on... The right has bailed on Roberts for a couple of his other decisions, especially after Obamacare.
Right.
But I think, Kavanaugh could be key here. You're not going to get Thomas. He is who he is. But
how do you feel about Clarence Thomas, Steve? You've never really articulated this.
Listen. I'm
being sarcastic. You've articulated it very well.
He just. The worst thing about him is I'm not even so much critical of his actual legal decisions because he doesn't he doesn't do a lot in terms of writing. He writes his occasional dissent and whatever, but for the longest time it was literally, Justice Scalia said this, so I'm going to say the same thing with an exclamation point. And so since
I didn't mean to derail us on this, I can't help myself when it comes to
anyway. All right, so I'm sorry.
That's my fault. My fault.
But I mean, to my point is, I think people using 1% rape and incest, it shouldn't be in there, and that's no reason that, I think that's absurd, ridiculous, and I don't even think it's short-sighted. I think it's intentionally just wrong, right? They're doing it on purpose, and they don't care about, they don't care about the people that they're impacting. They don't have anything to back that up. I think in their minds, they know it's not true, and they don't give a fuck. That particular point is the thing that irks me the most about this, along with everything else, right? And again, it all sucks, right? But I mean, there's levels to how bad things suck, and the fact that there are people out there willing to intentionally ignore and just say that rape and incest are only 1%, and so they shouldn't be a part of the equation. But like that's the part that gets me the most. But the reality is that Alabama is doing this for the specific reason of pushing this to the Supreme Court.
Right.
And so so what they're looking for is, this isn't federalism, right? Because there are a lot of people out there saying, oh, this is federalism, and this is the states doing what they want. No, Alabama's doing it, and other states are doing it. Missouri is coming up with something, that's pretty harsh as well. I mean, Ohio, we have the heartbeat bill.
Right.
Each state that feels passionately about this, they're all doing this for the specific reason of trying to get the Supreme Court to bite on one of these cases so that this can be relitigated and we can reestablish law that's already been set as precedent. That's what is going on here. That's why they're doing this. They are they're putting women's lives at risk. Right? They're putting women's lives at risk over politics and what they believe. You don't believe in abortion, you don't want abortion to happen, then you don't have one, right? You don't like gay sex, then you don't go fuck anybody in the ass or get yourself fucked in the ass. How about that? Right?
Those are
simple.
In reading the article you sent me, homosexual sex is still a crime in Alabama.
Yes.
You could literally face criminal charges for that.
Sodomy.
And I mean,
it's a great Family Guy episode.
Okay.
Sorry.
For once you throw a
cowboy about sex.
I'm now terrified where this is going to lead to, but really, it's crazy to me that is a crime in the state of Alabama today. It's not something, again, just like abortion, not something that impacts us, but the fact that it's being criminalized is crazy to me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, technically, sodomy is still a crime in some places, and I think in like Mississippi or someplace like that sodomy is still a crime. So,
okay.
Listen,
I mean,
a lot of whiskey on a wrong night that could implement one of us.
Let's shift gears now, shall we? All right. So there's a big issue about immigration reform. I honestly am not up to date with this. So
listen, I'll get you up to speed pretty quick.
All right.
So Trump and his team, Jared Kushner, with a lot of support from Stephen Miller, put out this immigration reform, idea, I guess.
Calling it a bill is generous.
Yeah. I mean, it's not there yet. I mean, right, it's not sponsored by, anyone in Congress. So it's just like a, concept. But, I mean, it's all merit-based, and you have to pass they want you to pass a
citizenship
kind
of?
A citizenship or a civics test.
Okay.
You have to know English. You have to have a certain high level of skilled labor. All these other things, which, listen, there's nothing inherently wrong with it, all right, to be clear. Now, the realistic part of this is that the Democrats aren't going to get behind it at all because the way it's set up is your lower skilled labor, like the way they designed it is if you're from India or China or Africa and you're a neurosurgeon or a computer scientist or whatever, you can come. Great.
Welcome aboard, right?
Right, but if you're just picking tomatoes, right, and I don't know, in the real question, and I guess because it applies to me, is where do construction workers fall, right? Like, so if you're, in construction,
pounding nails or designing HVAC, both in construction, but different things.
Right? Or even, whether it's drywall or,
painting,
masonry or any of the various trades, which there are a ton of those workers who come up from Mexico, and some of them, yes, absolutely illegally, and work in construction. Where do those people fall? The reason why that impacts me, I'm in construction, right? Real estate development requires building and rehab and everything else. And a number of projects, some of the laborers, there's some questions on their legality, right? So are those, are we going to increase our security enforcement to the point where those guys can't get in illegally, which, okay, fine. Then if they got to come through legally, are they going to be able to get through with this new plan? Is their skill set skilled enough to allow them entry based on merit or not. And if it's not, then we're going to have a serious fucking problem, right? Because that level of skill in construction, like I've dealt with all, like, you know, I just got back from Mexico.
Right.
And the place where I stayed, you know, one, it was a resort, so it's a little bit different, right? Like the requirements are very high. But, you know, 5-star resort, you know, right by the Pacific Ocean.
Humble
you know,
bragging going on right
No, I'm just, but,
no,
well, it's a setup because,
asshole.
you know, Tiger Woods has designed a golf course there. Tiger Woods has a house there. So this place is still being built out, and the construction was amazing, right? I went on a tour of one of the high rises that was being built, and it was literally being built as I was taking this tour, and my mind was just blown at the quality of the construction. I mean, everything was seamless. Every fixture was perfect. Everything was level, evenly aligned. Like it was all, like it was just amazing. Like, and I've been to 5-star hotels. I've been to like everything in the U.S. from Miami to Vegas to New York and everywhere else, right? And the level of craftsmanship that I saw down in Mexico was just like, it was unmatched. It was unrivaled. It was remarkable. And so those are those same guys come, like they do their work during the season down in Mexico, and they hike it across the border, and then they do the same thing here. And so if you remove them, right, you got to replace them. And everyone's saying America first and America, like, show me an American worker that has that level of fucking craftsmanship, right?
They exist, but they're in limited numbers.
They do in limited numbers, right? And so the people coming in illegally, like, they serve a purpose, right?
Absolutely.
Like, so the question is, how do we accommodate for them? Right, and the way this new immigration reform is being presented.
So, yeah, what are the fundamentals of it? Because
that's the thing. We don't know, right? We don't know. They don't have definitions in terms of what skilled labor means and all that broken out. So, I mean, I don't know.
During World War II, they had something called the Migrant Worker Program, where they literally arranged for people from Mexico to come into America and perform labor-intensive jobs that were not available because American men were overseas fighting a war and American women were doing factory jobs to replace the American men who were overseas fighting the war. And I thought that system at the time worked great. Now, maybe I'm reading nostalgic history. Obviously, I wasn't alive for that. But I would like to see us return to something of that nature. Because most people who come in they would love to be able to travel across the border, you know, be with their families in Mexico, but make money in America, but they can't do it without risk, so they don't take the risk. So if you want to end or
I think they do take the risk, right?
Well, they do, but if they didn't have to take the risk, they would be much more apt to working here, returning to their families, and
I mean, but if they had a better path to being able to stay here, maybe they bring their families, and maybe they're able to circulate the money that they're making.
Steve, honestly, from my experience, I don't think they are gung-ho on staying here. They just want to be able to consistently feed their families and live in safety.
They're not necessarily gung-ho on staying here because if you're coming across illegally, then it's not ideal. Right? Like, so they go and they cross the border. Now, listen, there's plenty of people who do it legally. Right? There are plenty of people who do it legally who can, in like California and Texas, but we could probably get more workers and we can get, you know, more of their, you know, the quality craftsmanship and craftsmen if we could say, all right, let's just stop, right? We know that they're going to do it better for cheaper, so let's figure out a way to get them here legally.
Okay,
right?
All right. Or get them back and forth safely and illegally.
Or something, right?
Yeah.
I mean, but what's being proposed right now is essentially dead in the water, right? Democrats aren't going to sign on to this no matter what. Like, the Democrats aren't going to reach across the aisle for this. They're going to make Trump eat it, and he's going to use it, right? Like, he's going to use this to campaign. And he's going to be like, listen, no, they're being obstructionists, and they're not trying to help, and we presented this beautiful plan that's America first, and the Democrats
are resisting, blah, blah, blah.
Right, like they're right, like so that's how it's going to play out.
You're right. That is how it will play out. And I'm also concerned about the strategy towards Iran because there's now John Bolton is now talking about, you know, aggressive military action towards Iran, and I don't
know. John Bolton hasn't actually said that.
Okay. All right. Well, okay. He didn't say those words, but he
didn't say it. He didn't.
Go,
so this is what's happening. What's happening right now is geopolitics 101. Iran they don't like the fact that they're being sanctioned to hell, right? So they're saying, if you don't lift the sanctions, then we're just going to say, fuck you, and we're going to do what we want to do, right? We're going to start enriching uranium, and we're going to start, building our nuclear program.
Right.
And the United States is looking at that. Trump and the administration is saying, that's not ideal. You guys are really notoriously bad actors. And so you take your bad behavior mixed with a really bad weapon type, and that's a bad combination. So they sent over, a destroyer, a battleship. And there have been rumors about sending troops over, 120,000. There's conflicting reports, and I don't know how accurate that is. But what we do know for sure is that there's definitely a destroyer, battleship headed their direction, headed towards Iran. So I think what this is listen, you want to dick around, then we're going to put a whole hell of a lot of pressure, right off, right within striking distance.
Right. Which concerns me for a variety of reasons, but go ahead.
And I think Iran has come around because they said, listen, we don't want war, right? We just want you to ease up on the sanctions. So maybe there's a middle ground here, but whatever, and I don't think Iran does want, I don't think they want war with us at all.
No one wins, but they lose for sure.
Right. They lose absolutely, unequivocally, no matter what happens if we go to war. Yep. Right? Now, where we come out politically after that, and not to mention the losses that we have in terms of life and money, everything else. Yeah, for sure, but it definitely impacts them more because their country is destroyed, right? They've got plenty of examples around them of what happens if you really want to push this too far. And I think Iran is smart enough to say, I don't think we want that, right? We don't necessarily want to play by your rules, but we don't want that. And so can we get to a middle ground? Hopefully the answer is yes. I think John Bolton's name is getting thrown out there by people who know that John Bolton is vulnerable because he's been considered a war hawk in the past. Right. He had a lot to do, he was huge on pushing for the war in Iraq. But the circumstances were different, right? I mean, that was right after 9/11. We were looking for someone to
punch back,
to punch in the face for what happened with 9/11. There was we've multiple reports on how shoddy the intelligence was regarding Saddam and the weapons of mass destruction, and so it's easy to dump it on John Bolton because he was there before. I don't know if this is him. I don't believe that the administration is saying we're going to go to war with Iran. I don't believe that's what they're saying, but I do believe what they're saying is Iran's not playing by the rules. They're openly talking about how they're going to, violate, agreements that they've agreed to. So we have to do something. We can't just sit back and do nothing. So here's a whole bunch of missiles and fighter jets and everyone else right off your coast to hopefully help you get your mind back right.
Well, my concern is when you put American sailors in proximity of a nation like Iran with all other nearby nations also potentially harboring agitators, ill will, whatever, and you're taking a chance, right?
Yeah, you are.
You send someone at them, and if a speedboat's going at me and I'm a machine gunner on an American naval vessel, I'm shooting them.
Well, that's why you don't get a machine gun. Two,
I want a machine gun. Actually, I don't.
Two, I think. Listen, I think that.
But Steve, realistically, if that's powering towards you, I'm sure there's warnings or whatever. But at some point, that's a threat, and you're shooting.
Maybe, right? But I think you're putting the cart way before the horse.
All right. Well, okay.
Right. I mean, I
don't want to go down this road because we have.
Well, I mean, you're talking about a fucking battleship destroyer, right? I'm not good with the
The
Navy.
USS Cole got blown up by a fucking fishing boat. And
Fair.
a bunch of soldiers died. In part because they didn't have the capability of shooting back at it. So that happened, I mean, it was 15 years ago.
USS Cole isn't the thing that they sent over there. That ship that they sent over there has plenty of capability of taking out anything that comes in within a fucking
but that's my point,
mile
though.
of it.
If they get close, though, at some point you got to shoot.
Okay,
that's
fine.
my point.
But I just.
All right.
I don't think we're getting there, right? I mean, and even if they do, right? Even if you're dumb enough to send something out there, like, yeah, they're going to blow it up, and they're going to say, "Listen, it was a threat. We warned you." Right? Like,
okay, but suicide bombers have succeeded in the past because of not getting stopped.
So you're saying that that would be the impetus of starting a war?
Potentially. Yes, that is what I'm saying.
I don't think so. I think. Listen.
What's our World War I? Archduke Ferdinand getting assassinated by one crazy person.
And we've learned some things since World War One. And
have we?
Well, well. But I think that if you have some rogue splinter cell that breaks off and decides that they're going to go head to head in their fucking Bayliner versus a battleship, and then they get blown out of the water.
Suicide bombers know they're going to die.
I get it, but is Iran then going to say, "Oh, you blew up that ship, so we're going to..."
No, or are we going to say, "Hey, this was an Iranian plot," and then shoot at something?
No,
I'm not.
Listen, as
I'm
much as I'm
not
not
level the bottle because we've been hitting it pretty good today.
As much as I'm not a fan of Trump, I do not believe that he wants another war on foreign soil, especially in the Middle East. Right? I don't believe he wants it in the Middle East or North Korea or anywhere else. I
agree
believe that he wants it.
Does Bolton? And can Bolton push him far enough? Because that's my concern.
I don't think so. I think that if Bolton went too extreme, I think that he would punt on Bolton like he's punted on everyone else.
That's true. He's not been shy about getting.
Right. I mean, like,
house.
listen, if you know, I mean, John Kelly gone, Mattis gone.
Yep.
Now, which disappointing because you would think that those were the people that would hold him in a check. Kelly disappointed me. I think Mattis was who he was, and I think he. You know, he was like, all right, if you're not going to listen to me, then you can fuck right off. Literally, I think that's what his letter said.
I don't know if the exact words.
I think he had it in invisible ink at the bottom. You don't even need to read the rest of it. Just look at this. You know, even Rex Tillerson, like, I had a lot of respect for Rex Tillerson and what he did. I mean, so, like, Trump has no issue of saying, you know, Steve Bannon, Sebastian Gorka, like, all those people are from Breitbart, right? Even if we get rid of everybody else, right? Like, Steve Bannon came in and was the chief of cocksucking, and Sebastian Gorka was
I don't think it was a technical title.
Whatever he was supposed to do, and then, like, those guys are out, right? So John Bolton's balls get too big, and he thinks he's running the show. Trump won't allow him to do that, right? Like, Trump is running the show, and Trump doesn't want another war, and John Bolton says, well, fuck you, I'm going to start a war. Trump will absolutely get rid of him.
Probably. I'll agree with that. Right? If he recognizes what's going on.
He does. He does. Like, come on now. Like, I mean, again, he's a pompous ass, right? Like, he's all the adjectives or whatever you want to call him, but I do not think that Trump is I don't believe in my heart of hearts or in any way, other shape or form that he would allow himself to get pushed into a fucking war, right? Trade war is one thing. Putting soldiers' lives at risk and people dying, whole nother thing.
I hope you're right, is all I'm going to say.
I'm fucking right.
All right. Of course you are. All right. Steve, we've been wasting our time talking about trivial shit when there's really important shit happening in America right now, which is the finale of Game of Thrones comes down on Sunday, which is when this will get published. All right, so I've been very critical of the writing and the style. And a lot of people are on your side telling me to fuck right off. I get it.
Yeah,
I'm in the minority.
But,
here we go.
The minority is growing. I mean, to the point where there's a petition out.
300,000 people signed
that's significant, right?
To have it redone, which is hilarious to me.
Right. I mean, it's just like it needs to be rewritten. Like Punt on season 8, it needs to be rewritten by competent writers because it's terrible. Do I think it's terrible? No. I do think that it's definitely not what we kind of got in the first 5, 6 seasons. And so, I'll give you some credit in saying it's a little bit disappointing, but to the point where, I've still been entertained.
I agree.
Right, like I've still been thoroughly entertained. Some of the things that have irked you, I didn't even notice, and I'm pretty sure 99% of the population didn't notice. So, like the whole wolf thing, like I give you nothing for because that's literally nothing.
We've discussed this,
right? Like,
earlier,
there are other people who have come out and said, like, listen, that had to happen because if you read the books, you'd realize why that was that. Right, like it was so significant in the books that if they were going to stay true to the books at all, that they had to keep it in, right? And we didn't read the books.
I did not read the books.
And so
I wrote an article on our webpage about how I didn't read the books. I'm not the books are much better guy. I'm
with that aspect. Because it's the last episode,
a lot of shit went down. Let's not be spoilers. We know what happens.
Like, come on, the final. By the time this airs, the final will be coming on 5 hours later.
Right.
If you haven't seen it by then I don't know.
It's your problem. It's your problem, right? But the idea there's a petition like, you have to do this again and make me happy. And I guess there's a bunch of people who've named their daughters Khaleesi and they're furious now. Yeah. Now, I don't want to spoil anything. You're right. However, that's hysterical to me.
Like, that's on you. You actually deserve that.
If you name your kid after a Game of Thrones character and you're shocked that character isn't going to be glorified. By the way, her first season, she got banged by Khal Drogo. Never mind.
Well, and I think a lot of, if you went as far as to name your kid Khaleesi, your daughter, chances are you were a fan of those scenes.
True.
Right? Like, I know plenty of women who find, what's it? Jason Momoa, who find him plenty of women who went and saw Aquaman for no good goddamn reason other than he was fucking Aquaman.
Dude is fucking ridiculously jacked and whatever.
Right. Like, if I could, like, and I've also determined, we're way off track here. I've also determined
here we go,
that there are a few people in Hollywood that I can never meet. And the reason why is because I feel like if I were to meet them,
you would fanboy out?
No, okay. Not fanboy out. If we were to meet and connect, it would be a disaster. And I believe that me and Jason Momoa...
You've met Kanye West.
Right. Like, that was just...
It was almost a disaster.
Right, it was almost a disaster. Like, dude's fucking weird. But if me and Jason Momoa were to meet, like, in public... Like at a bar or just at a social event where there was alcohol involved.
You would meet out like
I think not even no. I don't mean in a bad way. I think we would click, and I think it would just be next day, hangover, probably in another state, possibly another country. Lots of questions, lots of laughs. We probably would smell terrible, and there would just be a lot of gaps.
And Vladimir Putin would say, "You must go now. You destroyed my barricade."
Yeah, pretty much like, all right, you guys got to go. Like, you guys made a fucking mess. And I don't have time to explain this to the fucking
So you're more about the gatekeeper and the keymaster or whatever from Ghostbusters. You're more worried about the two alpha maleist fucks like destroying the world.
Right, because I just feel like hey, let's have a couple beers. Who can drink beer faster? Right? Who can drink a beer in a shot faster? Who can drink let's do Irish Carva. Okay. And then the next thing you know, we're on a plane to Vegas, and the next thing you know, we're in fucking North Korea. I don't know. I feel like he and I, it's probably best that we never meet.
You know what? You're probably right, and I do want to say that I've expressed my complaints about Game of Thrones writing, and I stand by everything I've said. But the number of people who want a petition to say you have to do this again, this doesn't count, is a really bad sign of where we are as a society.
Are you not enjoying the show?
I'm enjoying it.
The last episode was a little like I thought. The last episode was like okay. Oh.
See, I think it illustrated my complaints though. That I don't want to do any spoilers. But there was too much clean. Too much. Let's make everything clean where the right person.
That's bullshit, man.
It's not.
It is bullshit. Right. Because you're at a point where you're trying to make it a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Like anything that happens.
I totally disagree with you.
I don't know. You're still off. You're still fucking wrong.
Okay,
I still have mob rule behind me.
You're actually right, but that I'm actually right. But we'll move on from that.
You already had the Freudian slip of what you knew you were supposed to say when you said when I was right. You knew I was right.
All right. We got two more things we need to talk about, and we'll get out of here because we've been going a bit long. You talked about throwing down drinks with Jason Momoa. Neither of you can hang with the now late, great Bob Hawke, former Prime Minister of Australia, who did what? He drank 2 pints in...
No. First of all,
he was
former Prime Minister of Australia for I don't know.
I don't care.
Well, he was a lot. Well, I want to set this up. He was a prime minister. He was the longest serving Prime Minister of Australia in the late 70s, early 80s. Kind of a career statesman sort of guy, and he's well known in Australia, and that's an understatement.
Okay.
He's one of the most beloved political figures in Australian history. That's what I was looking to say. And what caught my eye about this was that he's in the Guinness Book of World Records for booze. And what he did was, back in 1955, he took down 2.5 pints of beer in 11 seconds. Now listen.
That's fucking incredible.
That's amazing, because I can chug beer like a motherfucker, right? Like, there's no doubt about it. You've seen it.
And like, I'm no slouch myself.
You're no slouch, but listen, you've seen me take down plenty of stuff, like not even in a race sort of situation where I just come down after work and I'm
gone. Yep.
Right? This dude took down 2.5 pints in 11 seconds. Guinness Book World Records. And I said, if that ain't a Steve and Jim guy, and if that ain't a Whiskey Congress guy, I don't know who the fuck is. Right? Like, so, I mean, we put him posthumously in the Whiskey Congress Hall of Fame.
Agreed.
Right?
Like, the Chugging Hall of Fame.
Neither of us has been to Australia.
No, we have not. We have not.
And maybe I would like to get there. I would
love to go to Australia.
I would kind of love to go, but I heard they're kind of racist dicks. So I'm kind of on the fence.
And
but
I feel like, and I'm white. So
I feel like that can't be. Like, I feel like they probably are, like, over the long term. But I think if you go and visit, most people will be really nice to you.
They're not really good to the Aborigines, because
that's
what British
really
colonies do.
Like, they're really bad with them. But
British colonies are never nice to
those
people.
They are the biggest dicks of all the dicks. Right, in terms, like, metaphorically speaking, but not penetration speaking. Why did we go down that road? Fucking A, Steven. All right. The only other thing better than that is perhaps the greatest hockey player of all time, Vladimir Putin. Not perhaps.
No, Wayne Gretzky and Juniors was put on news.
I don't know.
So,
man. First of all, we have enough people who listen to us in the region of Russia that I think we need to be careful.
You know what? That's not wrong. I have Simply Safe on my house. I think I'm okay.
Really?
Because Vladimir Putin can't get by Simply Safe. I'm a fucking dead man. Vladimir Putin was credited with 8 goals in a 14-7 win in an international game, and then proceeded to celebrate with face planting on the ice while tripping over a fucking rug. Please look at this. Google Vladimir Putin hockey. Not hockey. And you will see him. Now, what you may or may not know, my guess is you don't know, is among the players in that game was
there were some all-time greats.
Pavel Bure was known as the Russian Rocket. He scored like 76 goals in a season. Which,
like, guys, all right, just so we can put this in perspective, right? Like, I'm not a complete novice idiot about hockey, but Vladimir Putin scored 7 hockey goals in one game.
8.
You're right. 8.
Do not short Mr. Putin his goals.
8 hockey goals in one game, right? Like, in a high-scoring NHL game, right? 3-2 or 4-3. That's
a reasonable game. Yeah,
that's a high-scoring hockey game, right? 4-3, and like, that's a lot of goals, right? He scored 8 by his damn self, right? Which tells you is that the goalie wasn't too interested in stopping Vlad's. In stopping his shots, right? Like, I mean, he was like,
fear of being murdered.
Right? Like, he had the right frame of mind in terms of saving his life. So, you know, he wasn't going to be the one to say, I shut out Vladimir Putin, right? Well, no one's going to hear about it, buddy.
Because it won't be in the history books, and you're dead.
Right. And
him face planting on that rug was so fucking hilarious to me. And you always want to do a This Week in Russia segment, and if we could make it work, I would love to. I'd be on board.
Well, what we have to do is basically we need
a video component.
You
got to see it to enjoy it.
And I think at some point in time we do need to figure that out a little bit behind the curtain. But we do need to figure out, because YouTube is the platform that's growing the most, blah, 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 blah. So maybe we should get, some dual cameras, and I think that maybe there's some way to do it with Skype or some shit.
Sir.
But anyway.
Moving on, yes.
Yeah, Vlad, Russia.
8 goals in a game is the greatest athletic performance by a political leader since Kim Jong-un golfed 18 holes and shot a 34, meaning he eagled every hole but 2, and those 2 he double eagled, which I would love to know how that went down in actual time. Like, yes, Your Excellency, that stroke does not count, so use your putter again from the tee, and 18 strokes later.
Hold on. Besides the Vladimir Putin thing, though.
Yes.
There's the backup Russian story about the slap fights that they have.
I showed my friend Beth that yesterday. She's like, "Why are you watching this?" I'm like, it's Steve's thing. And watching dudes slap the shit out of each other in front of a crowd.
Listen, it's not just them slapping each other. It's not like 2 drunk assholes at a table.
Right, like just like
right, but I mean, it's not 2 just drunk assholes at a party slapping each other, right? Like this is
it's a competition,
sanctioned
this is
event.
This is like
they have sponsors.
It reminds me of Over the Top, right? Arm wrestling.
Well,
but they're slapping the shit out of each other.
Well, yes, but I thought more of dodgeball with Vince Vaughn. But okay. Either way. But it's still like a sanctioned event. There's cameras, there's crowds, and not just like a few hundred people. Like there looked like there was like 10,000 people watching a slap fight. Right? Like, I mean, and then the one dude got slapped so hard, like he falls back, they catch him.
And they push him back into the competition.
You
need to put this on our site.
Before they push him back in, like the woman comes over, gives him the smelling salts,
that's right.
And he's like, okay. And then like it's a smaller dude versus the bigger dude with the beard, and then like so he slaps the dude with the beard unfazed. Dude with the beard slaps him, like his whole body goes to shit.
Crumples, yes.
Like, I was just like, what is this?
You know what, Steve? I think we need to bring this to America. The slap fest is something we need.
Nah, it's gonna go wrong. It's
going wrong there.
No, you're not wrong. But okay, it would go so terribly wrong here because it would be hipsters versus like angry powerlifting construction dudes, right? And then the hipsters would work their way through like their little bracket, and then they would have to face, powerlifting bearded tattooed dude, and it would not go well, right? Like, I mean,
You're not talking me out of it at this point.
Fair,
Steven. Let's close this up.
All right,
Steve. Good talking to you. Good. Yeah, decent whiskey. We went through a fair bit of it.
Also know what we're looking for, right?
We had $20 bottle.
Right. We had a plan. We
were supposed to get the bottle in bond. It wasn't available.
Right. So settled for the next best thing. But
congratulations, Mr. Putin, on your 8 goals, which I'm sure were all hard earned and not given to you. So the goalie didn't get assassinated and wrapped in the rug that you tripped on and face planted on, which I totally recommend you Googling or YouTubing because it's hilarious. We're at Whiskey Congress on all social media. Jim at Whiskey Congress, Steve at WhiskeyCongress.com for emails. Thank you very much. Any final words?
Thank you. Got a lot of new Twitter followers over the last couple weeks. Not sure what's going on, but a lot. We're over 1,800 followers, I believe, on Twitter. So thank you for the people who have jumped in. All the listeners.
Our listening numbers have been good too. So thank you all. Exciting. Please spread the word. Please talk about us.
Right.
We know we're a bit stupid, but we're having fun and we're drinking whiskey, so enjoy.
Right. That's it.
All right, we're out.